Thank you for joining me for this video on refilling your Sodastream CO2 cartridges using dry ice. As you can see, I have a couple of empty standard size Sodastream CO2 tanks. These are older tanks, but they should be about the same, and they're marked 14.5 ounces. This means there's 14.5 ounces of CO2 in the tank, which we will be filling with 14.5 ounces of frozen CO2 or dry ice. Dry ice can be sourced locally from a grocery store. This cost me $1.69 a pound, and I picked up about 2¼ pounds. Generally, you can dig around in the cooler and find them in various sizes. You don't have to purchase a huge chunk, and you're only going to pay for what is weighed at the register. Now, I recently acquired two Sodastreams, one which was purchased new, and one which I purchased off of Craigslist, primarily to get some empty tanks for $10. That is where these two tanks come from. I've been interested in purchasing a Sodastream for years, but was put off by the cost of replacing the CO2 tanks. A friend of mine kept trying to convince me to just purchase the conversion kit to hook it up to a large tank, which is cheaper to fill and lasts much longer. This was not a valid solution for me, however, as I didn't want to drill a hole in my granite countertops to run a line to a hidden tank, so I held off. Recently I discovered that the valves are removable and the tanks can be filled with dry ice. And that got me to purchase one new one, and then a quick search on Craigslist turned up a very old device with two empty tanks for $10. That old machine has been torn down and cleaned and is awaiting some custom paint. There will probably be a video of that in the next couple of weeks once I decide on the paint scheme. Now, when you open these tanks, the first thing you want to do is pop the little valve on the side off. That can be removed with a small adjustable wrench. Let me grab that. Now this is a high pressure release valve, but removing this first will allow any residual pressure to release from the tank before removing the large valve. Removing the large valve while the tank is under pressure can turn the valve into a projectile. When you remove this valve, please note that there is a small piece of metal in there. This is the high pressure end of the valve and should burst if the tank is overpressurized, allowing gas to escape out of the tank carefully. Be careful with this piece, you do not want to damage or lose it. Now, there we go. In my second tank here, I did slightly damage that part, so I'll see if that holds pressure later. Now to remove the main body of the valve, I use a large pipe wrench around the waist and a large adjustable wrench around the top valve. You'll notice there's some flats here that the wrench goes right onto. These are all standard threads, so righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. And once you break the seal, it's very easy to manually unscrew both of the valves, the high pressure and the main valve. And just like that, we have an open tank. Next, we're going to break the dry ice into small chunks, as we need to get it into the neck of the tank. Now you'll notice I think I went a little too far here and crushed the ice into a fine powder, almost like a snow. While in some ways that makes it easier to put the dry ice into the tank, it also allows the dry ice to sublimate faster, and you lose a lot of it to atmosphere a lot faster. Now we're going to turn on the scale and put the tank onto it. This shows that the tank is 19.15 ounces. We're going to tear the scale because we want to measure about 14.5 ounces of dry ice. I'll go a little light to be on the safe side, and actually we want to put the funnel on there and make sure we tear that also. Now with a spoon, I'm going to start putting dry ice right into the funnel and just shaking it into the tank. Ooh, that was a little too high. After a few seconds, I found that some of the larger chunks were getting stuck in the neck of the funnel. So I went and grabbed my ice pick, which was not in my drawer where it should have been, but on my back counter or workbench. If you don't have an ice pick, you can use a skewer or anything sharp and pointy. Just make sure that it doesn't have a metal handle, because that will get very cold very quickly. Now you can see me just jamming the ice in the funnel over and over. This goes on for about 10 minutes, so I'm just going to fast forward to the end here. And here you can see I'm at 14.2 ounces. Look at all the frost buildup on the outside. Florida humidity at work right there. So let's take the funnel off. And oh, there went a couple of pieces out of the funnel. Let's just pick those up and toss them in there. And now we're going to take the main body of the valve and just put that on. Now, since the high pressure side is still open, you will hear it start to hiss. You'll want to grab a glove or a rag because this tank is extremely cold, as you can see from all that ice on the outside. Alright, once you get it on there pretty snug, you're going to want to get the high pressure valve. And I try to put it in face down, but the pressure of the CO2 coming out of that little safety valve is so high it's pushing it up. So I actually have to put it on upside down and just change my approach. Now we're going to tighten down that high pressure valve. And now we're going to tighten down the main valve body. And there we go. That is a total of 18.7, and that includes the valve. So that's the extra weight that's there. You can literally see it just freezing the moisture on the outside of that tank. Now I'm going to weigh the rest of this CO2 because it's amazing how much CO2 we lost to sublimation. This chunk started at 2¼ pounds with 36 ounces, and there's 9.3 ounces left. Add to that the 14.2 ounces in the tank, and that's a loss of 12½ ounces. I'm sure this wasn't all lost during this filming. The day I did this was a hot day. It was in my truck sublimating for 15 minutes driving home. Then the time I left it in my garage while setting up to film, and the extra heat from the lights in the shop, I'm sure contributed to the amount of loss I saw. I'll put the rest of that in the second tank. That tank will just be half full, but I'm sure it will be fine. Thank you for watching. If you're not a subscriber, please consider hitting that subscribe button. I hope to have more videos coming soon. I already have a few projects lined up, and I hope to see you on the next one. Have a great day, and stay safe.